Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Annerine Benold, the Director and Education Consultant at Kairos Academy, South Africa. And today I'm excited to have Daniel and Jared Rushton from Future Forward with us today. In the past, our spotlight sessions have focused on the tertiary domain and specifically speaking with some of our tertiary institutions, giving students insight into that area and higher education pathways. But for the first time, we are expanding that spotlight to include valued service providers who play a key role in helping students navigating their learning and career journeys. Now, Daniel and Jared, thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to learn more about how Future Forward can support Kairos Academy and the wider American high school students further. So, welcome, and maybe you can tell us a bit more about yourself and how you guys got started with Future
Well,
Forward.
thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. So Jared and I were both homeschooled, actually, our whole family, all four of us, right through to matric.
Awesome.
We all went on to a tertiary education of some kind, all four kids. And I think we had that experience of going through that system. And just like a brief sort of history there. I came out of high school, I did an aptitude test. Somebody told me that, or the career guidance counselor said I should pick up a CA along the way. A bit of a weird way to put a 5 year a 5 year slog filled with so much work. So I took that advice. We had some friends of ours that the dad was a director at an accounting firm.
Mm.
And I came out of high school, A student, straight into the accounting firm, doing my 5 year articles, studying and working at the same time. And I went into there and I struggled. I think I didn't have real world skills. Looking back now, that's what I can see happened. I didn't have the skills needed to be in that sort of an environment,
Mm.
and ultimately ended up getting quite depressed in less than a year.
Mm.
And I started to look around, and I started to ask questions of, do I really want to live this life going forward? I started to look at the people in the accounting firm, and everybody kind of looked sad. And it felt like they were living for that 15 days of leave that they got at the end of the year so they could go,
Yeah.
sleep in a hotel at the beach to recover from the year. It wasn't necessarily going on holiday, it was like going to recover from the year. And I think the combination of me not coping and just realizing, like, wait, this isn't actually what it was sold to be. Um, I ended up leaving there, and I thought, at that stage there was this a whole narrative of you can build a business online, you can work online. So I was like, perfect, I'm going to do that. And I quit my job. I remember it very well. My first day was off was the 1st of September. It was spring day, and I felt like I was springing into this new future. And very quickly, I figured out that I was a 20-year-old that didn't really have any value to offer to anybody. And I hit rock bottom. So I went from this very high, sort of like, yes, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make it on my own, to like 2 months later being like sitting on the floor of my friend's room at 2 in the morning, just feeling like, gosh, what am I doing? Since 2018, I've been asking this question again and again, and I think it's come out now to be, really what we are about is know what you care about and then have the skills to do something about it.
Mm.
And I think at the core of it, that's what Future Forward is. And why we started it was so that other teenagers like us don't end up in those situations of getting out into the real world and just realizing that they haven't actually prepped themselves as teenagers for this future of work, because it has changed drastically. And I think if we look at the experience that parents have, it was to do well in school, go get your grades, and then like be very valuable, make your time very valuable so
Mm.
that people will pay you a lot per hour. And that's kind of like the narrative that we've picked up that sort of parents understand. And that was because that's how the world worked. But then in leaving that as a teenager, very quickly figuring out that that's no longer the case. I think that's sort of why we're here. We're here to make sure that the teens that are moving forward through the homeschool years are coming out as strong players in the future.
That is awesome and an awesome testimony and an inspiring story, Daniel. So thank you for sharing that with us. Jared, the other brother. So can you share with us about your own journey towards future forward?
Thanks, Anureen. I think from my side, again, like Daniel mentioned, we were all homeschooled. I went into more like a artistic career. I went to study filmmaking and storytelling in Africa and Johannesburg. From there, did a whole bunch of different things, everything from running a chicken farm to trying to build a school up in Mozambique. And so we sort of found myself sort of at the end of a big chapter in my life with my kids, looking at like, what do I do now? And Daniel was just finishing up his honors at the time with his industrial psychology in Bloemfontein. And it was just sort of opened up a space of like, okay, well, what if we could work together? What would we do? What could we do? And on that journey along that, we really just, like Daniel was saying, really looking at like, how is the world changing and encountering some of those realities ourselves. And just noticing very quickly, especially since COVID, how the rate of which the world has adapted is just so much faster. So I think what we really came across there is that the world is changing very drastically at the moment. And, coming together again as two brothers, looking at this picture, and noticing that this is something we can do something about. This is an arena that we are very passionate about. We really do love supporting families. We're both passionate about like working with young people, and I think like it's a really big way that we can drive bigger impact beyond ourselves. When we can really partner with families, and communities like yours, we can really drive a much bigger impact in the world. We can really make us doing what we do a whole lot more meaningful. And so yeah, this is what we're doing, and we're really excited about it. And I think for us, it's really a privilege every time that we, hear a story back from a family or connect with someone new. It's always such a delight for us to experience that, and the joy of actually noticing that, like our lives can have meaning and we can really change people in really meaningful ways. So I think that that's really something that we are really enjoying and really looking forward to, keeping to do that and growing that space.
Awesome. So, Jana, again, listening to both of you, I understand my own decision to have you as the first service provider on here as the spotlight because I'm inspired just listening to you guys. And so you started with offering services recently to families, well, a number of months ago, so you can maybe pinpoint when and how. My own son, youngest, partake in that, and he thoroughly enjoyed it. Well, actually, he's graduated, but he will still finalize his entrepreneurship because the course is so interesting, during his
That's
off
so cool.
time. So share a bit about what you offer with the families so that they can also learn and apply that in their homeschooling.
Yeah, I think what Jared spoke about earlier about this idea of how the world is changing, and we realized that, I think what we came to was that the world has changed and is changing, and technology is developing so fast. And we're getting to a point now with the technology, and one of those big technologies is generative AI, things like ChatGPT and video editing softwares and things like that. But it's not just those technologies. Just the infrastructure that we have in place now with the tech space is that it has just fundamentally changed the world of work. And if you look at the future of jobs reports, the amount of jobs that are becoming redundant and the amount of jobs that are being created is just astronomical. It's like it's unprecedented. We've never seen this amount of job churn. That's what we call it when jobs don't become necessary and suddenly we have new jobs.
Yes,
And if you look back in history, that has happened. It's happened again and again, actually. And I think that's what we realize, is that it feels as if there's this like big doom and gloom. And there's a lot of, there's this huge narrative that like, oh no, the world's going to end. There's going to be no jobs. We may as well all just give up. Like there's a lot of sort of narrative out there like that. And I think when we started to look at it, we realized like this actually has been happening throughout history. The
yes,
difference is that now it's just happening so fast. Like the rate at which technology is developing is really accelerated.
yes,
So if you look at like when the steam shovel came in, a whole lot of trench diggers lost their job. When the printing press came in, then we lost all the scribes, then sort of became redundant because now we could,
yes,
mass print books. Or actually, the other day I was reading a story about when the calculator came through, there was a whole lot of human computers that became redundant because suddenly we could just use the calculator.
yes,
So yeah, I think we encountered that. And what we're seeing now is that the world is shifting from output. So we're expecting people from producing outputs to we needing people to produce outcomes. So instead of I can make a website or I can produce an annual financial statement, or I can produce a thing with my time. It's more, can I produce an outcome for somebody else? And that's really what's, if you look at the world of work and the way it's changing, the employees that are really contributing, the top 10% of employees that are contributing to companies and or building companies, or even freelancers, that top 10% of people are really focusing on this idea of, can I produce an outcome for my clients? And before the story was, can I become a CA so I can charge 2,000 Rand an hour and then I will be wealthy? To now, can I help my clients generate more revenue? And actually, in this outcome world, the quicker it is, the better. I mean, if we don't want ChatGPT to take 3 days to get back to us, the reason we use ChatGPT is because we throw in this massive article, and then within 30 seconds, it comes back with an analysis of the article, and it saved us so much time. So I think that's what we saw in the world of work. As we started to dig into this data and understand how the world of work was changing, we started to notice that there was actually frameworks and ways of understanding this that reduced the overwhelm. We then said, well, how do families actually then learn these skills, and how do we help them move their teens from this idea of, well, I'm just consuming all the time because there's just so much content to consume, to how do I become somebody who creates things and puts out value to the world? And through that, we sort of identified that if we could make some courses, we could help them develop real world skills, but we could also help them do projects that then start to develop those mindsets and competencies that we'll talk about in a second through doing the courses. Because at the end of the day, you can't give them a course on, here's a problem solving course, be better at problem solving. Funnily enough, like I went on this long journey of trying to find this complicated answer, and it came down to, the best way to prep your child for the current reality is to put them in the current reality and support them in doing things there. And it was like, oh, cool. So the best way to help somebody prep for the future is by helping them just live and actually interact with the real world. And that's sort of what we came up with. And that's then we developed courses to help teens then interface with the real world as they develop these skills.
And I think what I've just picked up with what you mentioned, the support, and I think that's where our homeschool families is in an ideal situation, because we are there then to support and guide and maybe facilitate their learning, but especially that support portion, coming in and not just throw them for the wolves, but maybe throw them for the wolves and then pull them back before the wolf actually bites them. But so it's great to hear, and I'm excited about what you else have got to share.
And the other thing that we love about homeschooling, now that you mentioned that, is the fact that we can change so quickly. If you are at a school with 3,000 students, for us to now to bring in these courses to them, it's going to take 5 years for us to get board approval. And like, if you're talking about these top schools, it takes ages. And then by the time that happened, the world will have changed by then. So I think that's why we also believe that homeschoolers are optimally positioned, because one, yes, they have that support, but two, also they can pivot. They can pivot so much quicker. And that's actually one of the reasons we love AHSD, is because you're not putting your kids in this time where their brain is developing and choosing what's important. You're not saying, here, these are the 7 things that are important, and you can only learn these 7 subjects, or 9 if you're ambitious. Whereas AHSD, you've got these 8 electives and all these other credits that you can do, and you can sort of build this very expansive environment for your child to explore and figure out who they are while they develop skills. And
I agree, it's agility and adaptability and possibility to personalize it, to bring in these value-adding courses. And so just maybe a question, Jared. When I heard you speaking earlier, the ages that you guys are focusing on, we've got students that's coming in from grade 1 or 2, and the parents are aware of what's happening, so they already want to start to build those skills and for the future. And then listening to what you have been presenting, I'm thinking about even young adults, students that's either maybe in university or outside university that have also not built these skills and are maybe already in the workplace but can improve themselves. So what's your target market and group that you are focusing on currently and maybe in the future?
So I think these ideas are so big. You just want to share them with everyone. And like you're saying, like I personally do have little kids. You know, my oldest daughter's only 8 years old, so she's a very long way from Daniel, your youngest. You know, it's a very different context, but I can already see how some of these skills are definitely things she's starting to encounter already at 8 years old. You know, and so I think there's always that excitement of like, whoa, you know, we'd love to get involved with so many different areas, but it's really like deciding, like, okay, well, where for now can we really catch a teen before they really start to get too deep into some sort of thinking mindset. So I think for now, our main focus is like 12 upwards is sort of where we recommend. Obviously, like the slightly older teens do tend to do a little bit better. Sort of from sort of grade 9 upwards, because by that point you do have a bit more of a context around you, what's happening around the world.
Yes.
I think you have started to notice a couple of things about what's happening. So that's for now where we are tailoring. I think definitely in the future we will look to expand that and to partner with families. But also for now, like we do have our other events, like our webinars and different videos and that. So I think we are trying to make sure those are sort of universally applicable. You know, for us, it's much more important that a teen can do it themselves. And again, that mom has the curriculum that she's doing with us every day and doing like worksheet A, worksheet B, worksheet C, which I think with younger kids is a bit more tricky to sort of give them that autonomy to make big mistakes, because that's really something that's very important. So yeah, that is at the moment where we're focusing, is sort of that like high school block, and really getting them ready for, you know, whatever comes after that. It's things like we're also going into such an interesting world where, you know, some degrees are still very worth doing. And for other people, starting up some sort of freelancing might be good. For someone going and get a job under a very strong entrepreneur might be the best play. And so like really making sure that, you know, whatever avenue this teen is going to be looking into, that they've got a good solid foundation of understanding that can set them up to really thrive in whichever environment that will be.
Yes. Wonderful. No, that sounds great. So, okay, so you mentioned some core competencies. So I'm very eager to learn which those are. So, Jared, can you tell us a bit about those, please?
So I think I'll start off with a bit of a story from when I was in university, and that'll help lay some groundwork here. So I remember being in first year, and we just shot our very first movie. We were very excited about it. I'm this big shot kid. I already know so much about things. We went into our next film. We shot our little film on like an actual film back then, which was really cool. And I remember sitting there at the end of sort of the first semester feeling like so proud of myself. And a friend of mine said to me, hey, do you want to go out for a movie? So I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. So I remember then we went to the IMAX. And this was when Avatar had just been released. So I remember sitting there in this IMAX cinema in Santon and watching this movie and having an absolute existential crisis, because I remember sitting there watching this film and thinking like, my film is so terrible. You know, and suddenly coming face to face with the reality that here's James Cameron that's made this massive film and I remember feeling just so crushed by that, and like everyone in the movie was so excited, and I remember sitting there like watching the credits thinking like, I'm wasting my time here. I can't do this. This is too big. I was talking to someone the other day where she was talking about how she'd love to write a book, but she just feels that like, how why even start, because there's so many book platforms, so many things to do. And I think for us, this is really, really like hectic to watch teens sort of come to the space of realizing I'm this person inside of a bigger world. But I think that crisis is very good. Having that realization is so important. I think a lot of teens never come to that point, especially now. I think a lot of the ecosystems around us are designed for consumption. You're being fed reels that cater to what you like. And if you go into Spotify or YouTube Music, it's already primed to know what type of music you enjoy. The ads that are being shown on our phone are very much primed to us and like what we want. I think it's very easy for us to sort of grow up in this cocoon where we don't actually realize there's an entire world out there, which is really exciting, but at the same time, it's really scary. So I think like what we're looking at here is like, you know, if you are going to become someone who is not looking at like, can I make a movie, or can I make, like Daniel saying, can I make a report for a client for their financials? So those things are important, but what's really big is like, can I drive outcomes? So can I be someone who notices what the actual need is? And can I then have the skills inside of myself to then actually pull it off? So we sort of boil this down into 5 core competencies, which we're calling the 5 pillars of future readiness. And really what those are is like 5 areas of capacity that your team can build where they will be creating outcomes by default. Like Daniel said, there'll be people who lose and there'll be people that win, sort of as this world changes. And really what we're looking at here is like, what type of team is going to win, and how can you really empower your team to become that? The first one being tech leverage. So this is really like looking at not only like digital tools, can you use technology to amplify what you're doing, to speed up the rate at which you can do that. Like Daniel mentioned, we don't want to wait 3 days for ChatGPT to respond. And so that's why we use it, because it gives us fast responses and we can use it
Yes.
well. The second one is then critical thinking. You can learn how to think critically, solve problems, and come up with new ways to solve issues that you see around you. So this is really a very crucial part of being someone who can be future ready.
Yes.
The next one is then grit and autonomy, and this one is very often underlooked. And I think, like, as parents, we are very quick to help solve pains or problems for our children because we don't want them to sort of suffer. But like Daniel and I say, the thing about reality is it's going to tailor itself one way or another. So rather let that happen at home. I think the big thing there is like really like building a space where your team can grow that grit, they can do tough things, and they can really learn that they can, they can actually own their life and they can drive it. It's something they can actually do.
Yeah.
Then the next one is outward mindset. And that also ties into what I was speaking about, like sitting in that avatar screen, just realizing that like this world is a lot bigger than I thought. And what's going to be required to pull this off is a lot more. And so I think that's very important to start to notice there's a world around you, but also that, inside of that, there's other people and they have needs and they want things to happen. So like if you can really start to become someone who notices that and can actually like play towards that. There's a lot of game theory inside of that in terms of like how you can really set up your life to succeed by helping other people succeed in their lives. And then the last one for us was a bit of a tricky one to name, but we've come up with innovation because I think the big thing there is like looking at how do you create solutions to problems and really mixing all different things together to create new solutions that can go into the new world. So I feel like if you are someone who can leverage technology, you can think critically, you've got some good grit and autonomy to yourself, you do have an outward mindset of looking at the people around you, noticing, and then you are able to innovate and come up with new solutions. Like if you are someone who has all those five, it's almost impossible that you will not be able to drive in outcomes. Those will be happening by default. And I think then the big thing then for us is like looking at how do we then create spaces that teams can do that inside of. So I think that's really where we came to our courses and really looked at like how could we frame those, because like Daniel was mentioning, you can't say to a kid like go be innovative. Like it's not something that a team can do. These are ideas they've never encountered, and so it's really like you have to create a space where that can happen. And I think Daniel can share a bit more about that, but that's really what we're looking at. Like how can you build a future ready team by incorporating these 5 pillars of future readiness for them.
Oh, thank you, Jared. That's extremely exciting to hear. And incorporating those, just looking back at my own career as well, that's what's required daily. I think in order to succeed and excel in the workplace, whether that is in a corporate environment or a private business or as an entrepreneur. So, so well done. Daniel, so it brings us then back to you and to tell us a bit more about the courses that you guys are offered to address those core competencies and develop those further in our students.
Yes, so there's these big 5 things, and it just maybe feels a little bit scary because you look at your teenager now and you're like, maybe you've got a team that's already on their way, but they have like weaker areas. We actually have a future readiness quiz where you can quickly take this and you can go and see of those 5 areas, where's your team's weakest area, where their strong areas, so that you know where to tailor and focus your efforts, because we are homeschoolers, we can do that. If you'd like to, you can head over to our website and we've got that future readiness quiz there, and it gives you a nice report, gives you a score on each pillar and tells you, maybe where some easy starting points to go from there. But yeah, I think the other part of this, so we have the future, so the future is changing, and it's positive, it is positive, and there's going to be people who win. And then we have the readiness part of this, which is the forward part of future forward. What type of a team is going to be a team that moves forward? And what we're seeing now, I mentioned this whole idea of we're changing from outputs being important to outcomes being important, is that proof is becoming the currency of the future, if you look at it. So it's not necessarily, do I have a degree? It's, do you have a degree? And can you do the thing that your degree trained you in? Or not, can you make websites? Can you make websites that deliver results? Do you have a website that gets me the outcome of selling more things? It's, do you have proof that you're able to produce my outcomes that I'm looking for? What we looked at was, okay, how do we create a system where these 5 core competencies are being developed while they are also producing proof at the same time. So we came up with 3 courses. So the first one there is Entrepreneurship Mastery. And this is really like, how do you think like an entrepreneur? So it's not necessarily for people who are only interested in business. If you are interested in business, it'll be perfect for you. But I think we're moving into this outcome-based society where entrepreneurial thinkers are going to be the people that win. And that's what we're teaching students to do. We're looking at the group of people, saying, where are the problems and what problems do they have? Then saying, who am I? And what is my unique skill set and my own sort of values and things I care about? And where is there a thing in there that I can build a business on? So that's what we call product founder fit. So we're saying, where's a problem and where's me and how do those come together? And then we're saying, how do we develop and test whether or not that can become a business? And this is something we call a minimum viable product. So how do we make a tiny test to see, is this something that we could sell? And then we go from the test, that little test, to then saying, can we create something that the market actually wants? Because just because people indicated that, yes, we have that need, doesn't mean the thing that you tested is the right business to be building. So what is that? What does that business look like? What does your product or service need to look like? So that's what we call product market fit. So then the teens sort of start to learn to do that. And they move into, now, how do I take that product to the market? How do I actually now launch my business? And then finally, that last step is like, how do I now grow that business to being something that's really providing value to the world? Now, of course, if you wanted to be an entrepreneur, that's perfect, because you'll come out of that with sort of like a baseline skill set. You'll know what you don't know. The other thing there is that any person in the working world is going to be in that sort of an environment going forward. That's what we are seeing a lot of the experts talking about, people like Daniel Priestley, Alex Hormozy, Seth Godin, all of these people are saying, like, we're moving into the world where even if you're not the entrepreneur, it's entrepreneurial teams that are going to be building great things. So understanding how a business works is going to mean that whatever role you play in that business, you're going to be doing more there. So that's our entrepreneurship course. Through that, there's videos that they watch. We explain the core principles. We're very much principles based. Then we explain why that thing is important, and then we explain to them what they need to do to put that principle into practice. And then it goes on to a quiz, where they do a quiz and a test, sort of helps them to think critically. It's not so much about testing whether they understand. It's more about getting them to think through what they understand about what they just learned. And then they go into a project. And these projects are scaffolded, so we don't just throw them in and be like, build a business. We start with a small project first, and we say, think about 10 problems that you can identify in your community. And then from there, of those 10 problems, which are the actual problems that you could build a business on? Here's a way to think through that. Here's a filter to pass those through. And then they go on to do something called the CAT score, where they say it's costs, assets, time, and skill. So they sort of say, what is my CAT score for each of these? And through that, then we can see that it's a guided process that they can go through. There's templates that they fill in. So they learn the content, they do a quiz, they do a scaffolded project. If you're into learning theory like me, this is Zykotsky's scaffolding theory from his social learning theory, if you want to go look it up. But we've taken that and we've put it into the courses. And basically the idea is, what can I do on my own? What I can do with some help, and what I can't do even with help. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to grow that little bubble in the middle of what I can do without help. So what we do is we provide the scaffolding through the templates and the videos to grow what they can do on their own by providing that help and that scaffolding. Yeah, so they go and they do the project. And as we go through the courses, so this is applicable to all the courses we build, the projects become more and more complex as that circle grows bigger and bigger. So we sort of go from a lot of help and a lot of scaffolding, and they become a bit more vague and a bit more difficult to do. So you'll be developing grit through that as well. But they're also going to be able to be moving into a space where they feel confident that they know how to implement what they've learned. So yeah, that's the entrepreneurship course. And we go all the way from who am I? What can I change in the world? What's a problem I would like to fix? All the way through to, okay, how can I build this into a business that, I don't know, potentially becomes, one of the Forbes 30 under 30 or something like that. Or it's just a business that I've built that I can live off and I don't need to get a job. I can build a lifestyle business, or it could go to a performance business. There's the sorts of outcomes we're looking at there. And then the other course we have is a course on media and marketing. So the entrepreneurship course is how do I create value? So how do I think like an entrepreneur? How do I behave entrepreneurially and create value? And the media and marketing course is how do I point out that value? How do I communicate the value that maybe I or somebody else is providing? So in this course, this is also a course we've seen is such a valuable skill. Communication is so vital in today's day and age. And people who aren't using media, like we're using it right now, you're fishing in your tiny little pond in your little town where somebody else is fishing in your pond as well from the other side of the world. So they're fishing all over the world and you're fishing in your tiny little pond. And that's just like, why? So in the media and marketing course, we teach how do you do that? How do you build out media and marketing campaigns? Again, they have the videos that explain all the theory from the principles based. So they're not necessarily learning how to use specific tools like Photoshop or Figma or something like that you may have heard of, because the Photoshop that I used when I was 8 years old, that Photoshop and the Photoshop that exists now are completely different tools. They have the exact same name, but there's almost no correlation between the two. What we realized very quickly was we don't need to teach these teams how to use platforms or technology, so to say. They need to understand what they do on that technology to produce the outcomes. So that's what we mean there by first principles, is understanding the underlying core mechanics of whatever they're doing. So in the media and marketing course, we start out with graphic design. So they learn to make things like social media posts, email footers, they learn to put together brand templates and like they put together colors and typography and all those things. And through that, they start to learn thinking about other people and the audience. What is the user seeing? So we don't just design something to make it look pretty. We think about who's going to see this, what do they need to know in order to change their behavior, and how do I create that? So that's what we sort of start to introduce in that graphic design. Then they learn to make all the things. They do make all the pretty designs and the posters and all that sort of thing. But really what they're learning is that idea of how do I build for an audience and what does the audience need? Then we move over to video editing, which is the second part of that course, where they learn how do I structure narratives? And again, how do I understand what the user needs to see in order to understand the story and change their behavior? So that's where we go through there. Then that one, they learn to storyboard and put together narratives that help people, again, change their behavior, because that's what we're trying to do in media marketing. We're trying to help people solve their problems by taking an action. And then we move over to web design. And that one there, it's not a coding course, it's how to build a website without code. And we guide them through that process of understanding how to do that. And again, that focus of what does the user need, what actions do they need to take, and how do I build a website that helps them achieve that action. And through all of this, it's something that we believe with marketing is helping people solve problems, because at the end of the day, people want to spend money to solve their problems. Like there's a reason people buy our courses. It's because they say, hey, we want our teams to be ready for the future. And I'm looking for somebody who can help me with that. And when I find somebody, then I pay them, right? And people are looking for that. So that's really what we're teaching in the media and marketing course. It's not, hey, can I trick people into doing something? It's, can I find a group of people that have a problem and show them how they can solve that problem?
Yeah. Ethical behavior.
Yeah, ethical behavior, but also this understanding that we actually help. Again, we're trying to help people solve their problems and help them get outcomes.
Yes.
Yeah, and then after the web design, we move on to, this is marketing. And yeah, this is where we talk about what is marketing and sort of go into these principles that I was just discussing now. How do we get people to change their behavior? Why do we do that? How does it work? And then they finish that off with how do you put together a campaign? So how do we take everything that we've learned now, making graphics, editing videos, making websites, figuring out sort of what to market? How do I put that all together? What parts do I need in this? I don't need all the parts all the time. So identifying what parts are necessary in that, and how do we then put that out there in a way that's going to drive people to take action. So yeah, that's the media marketing course. And in the personal finances course, what we're looking at is how do I manage my finances in a way that are going to enable me to use those resources, again, to make the world a better place and to live the life that I'd like to live. And that's sort of like the core ideas that we'll be developing in there.
Now that's wonderful, because for me, the personal finance, which is one of the required credits in order to matriculate through us, it's one of apart from what you've just mentioned and what you guys have developed, but those will count as electives in our environment. But the
Mhm.
personal finance, our offer credit is needed. And so we are really excited to see how you guys are coming in to fill that gap and provide something that's um, relevant and useful for our children in order for them to be good stewards of what has been entrusted to them.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So there we've worked actually with our first employee, Catalina Sanchez from Colombia.
Yeah.
She's living in Cairo. She's actually got 2 degrees in finances. She's worked in the corporate world. She's worked in startups. And we were talking about we need to find somebody who can help us build these personal finances course. And she was in the meeting. And then she just piped up, oh, by the way, I have 2 degrees in finance. And then she started to speak about all the books she's read on finances and all the podcasts. And she just started getting so passionate. And I was like, she's got the credentials, she's got the passion, and she's got this understanding. So she's the one who's helping us develop that. I'll be applying what I understand about learning theory and how to keep teens motivated and how to get them to understand things, to then convey all of that knowledge and passion that she's got
Awesome.
into that personal finances course.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the things that makes the difference. It's the content, but then it's also the way in which the courses are being presented, which makes it easily to absorb for the children. And again, using my own son as an example here, he told me it's not rocket science. It's not difficult, but it is a change in thinking that needs to be applied. So yeah, I'm excited to see what else will be coming forth from your uh, future forward domain. Okay, Daniel. So if a student wants to start with some of your courses, please guide us what he or she needs to do to kick the process off.
So I'll talk about how the student gets going on our courses, and then I think Jared can talk about how how a parent can get in touch with us if this sounds exciting. So we built the Future Forward Learning platform. So what the student will do is they'll go to that learning platform, they'll log in with their own credentials, their username and their password, and then they'll see there that they're the courses that they've signed up for. So whatever they've signed up for will be there on their platform. They'll click on whichever course they're working on. That'll take them to that lesson where they are. They'll watch that content. They'll learn from that. They'll take notes if they'd like to. Then they'll move on. They'll do the quizzes. But really, how we've designed it is it's as easy as possible to get going. Because I think one of the things we identified is that a lack of clarity of how to start is often the reason people procrastinate. So they get on, they click on the lesson, there's a video, they click play, they watch it, they move on to the next thing and they go through, they do the quiz, and then we get to a project page where they go on there. This is the project, this is what you're going to be doing, here's a tutorial on how to get started. These are the outcomes we need from you. Open the template. And that's that first project on any course that we do. It's very simple, very structured, very much here's the clear first action that you need to take. And then as we go on forward through there, obviously we want to reduce that because that's not going to develop strong thinkers and strong builders. We don't want people who can only do what's been told A, B, C. But that first step, we've aimed to make it so clear and easy to get going. So they produce their projects. And then we go through that, we give feedback and we send it through to them. And then they can use that feedback then to improve and think through again, what did I learn? What did I maybe not understand? And by the end of that, they get their credits. So we do also mark the work. We give percentages and grades and that sort of thing. But we don't want to put that out to the teens because it's a pretty useless metric, whether you got 80% or 90% or 100%, because really what we're trying to do is, did you understand the first principle and did you apply it? So while we understand that for AHSD and for these things, there's a reason we have these results and marks and that sort of thing. But ultimately what's more important is that the team's able to apply the learning theory. We do give those marks and we keep them recorded. So when you need reports in June or December, we generate those reports. It gets sent to you. So you don't really need to do anything on there, so that you can then use that to submit your marks and everything to HLA, because we know that's very important. And Anna-Reen, you know a lot more than that. And we've been working with you and seeing like what do the families need in that. And we've been going through you there. But really what we're trying to do there is reduce that admin load so that the parent is more engaging with the teen and asking questions about what they learned rather than trying to figure out, did you get that right mark and where are the marks, and trying to keep track of all that. Yeah, so we handle that whole process, and then you get a report at the end of the reporting season, feedback on their work and what they could do better to better solve other people's problems or whatever it is that they're working on. Yeah, that's that. And it's been really fun to build. I've been applying these 5 skills. There's been a lot of grit and needed, but yeah, it's been really exciting to build
Yeah.
at that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Thank you, Daniel. Jared, you wanted to expand on that as well?
Yes, definitely. So I think first of all, I think this is one reason we also love the American high school diploma so much, is like when you go into a world like this where it is changing so fast and you actually have to build all these sort of different types of proof. It's amazing for us that your daughter or your son can actually sit and do those things as their schoolwork. Like, what an amazing way to prepare for the future, that this is actually their school. And so I think we're really, really excited about that, and it's been so cool to be able to build sort of these more hands-on practical learning outcomes where these teens can actually sit and do this, and it's not like an extra thing they're doing at the end of the week when they're really tired, but like they can really schedule this in with the other subjects they're doing and really have a more holistic plan there. We personally think that's really fantastic, and it's been really exciting to partner with Kairos and the families that you're working with to also just see like what that can do, and it's really, really cool to see how much richer of a learning outcome a family can have. The big thing for us is then your teen actually gets to have this context, they get to learn like this. And I think really what we've looked at is like as we built these different courses and these different learning opportunities for your teen, it's really helping them to become someone who can be future ready. So it's someone that can look at the future, and yes, it is changing, which is scary, yes, in some instances, but it's also very exciting, and there's huge opportunities that have never been there before that your teen can actually have access to. And the next one, like they can actually sit and build the proof they need to show they can drive these outcomes, and really, I think that's really what we have built, and we're really excited about that. And I think for teens, this is confidence. It's allowing them to say, like, I am the kind of person who can drive these outcomes, I can make this happen. For parents, this is peace of mind, because it's like my teen is not just drifting around. They're like, are they going to come to 18, 19, suddenly they're confused, but they're actually building proof that can open doors in the future. And they are learning. They're building these five areas of competency inside themselves that can apply to the rest of their life. And I think also for the world, like this is hope. It's like here comes a generation of people who can solve problems, people who can create things, and are not just going to sit and consume things. So this sounds like something that you would like, to have a team who's future ready. I think the best step would be just to book a call with me. We can have a chat about it, see what you guys are doing, what learning outcomes you're trying to get to, and see, is this a good fit for you, and can these courses be applied? Obviously, every family has their own context, their own situation, and their own questions. So we're very happy to sit down with you, have a quick chat, and see how can this fit into your learning, and take it from there.
Okay, so I wish we had more time to discuss more detail. There were a couple of questions that I still have on my list, but thank you so much, Daniel and Jared, for your time today and for sharing your insights. The core competencies that we need to build in our children is crucial, and so I encourage all listeners and watchers of this webinar to explore the opportunities that's being offered by Future Forward, and to take those steps to shape your own learning and career paths. So thanks again once for everyone that have joined us here today. And we hope that this session has been helpful and inspiring as it has been for me. And we look forward to further insights and from these two gentlemen and more courses that you will bring to our students. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks so much,
Thank you.
Anureen. Have a great day.
Okay,
Thank you,
thanks,
everybody.
guys. You too. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.